This guy felt really happy. He made a small house all by himself, even though he didn't know how before. He planned to stay there for a long time. What made him even happier was that a newspaper in his town wanted to talk to him about building the house. It was cool that his hard work was going to be in the local news. But right when the interview was almost done, something strange happened. Since he was a little kid, Mark loved things that were really small. He started with ant farms, then got into detailed model trains, and then he got super interested in tiny bonsai trees. But now, as a grown-up, Mark was getting ready to do the ultimate small thing, building a tiny house. He had a simple reason for this. Mark worked as an environmental engineer, so he knew how much harm the modern world was causing to our planet. He believed that his tiny house could be a great way to show his beliefs. He got all the materials he needed in a way that didn't harm the environment. He also got a piece of land near a small, beautiful lake, surrounded by nature and with enough space to grow vegetables. Once he got his land ready, he started by making a strong foundation for his tiny house. He put up wooden posts, made the ground level, and made sure the base of his tiny house was secure. Mark worked tirelessly, sawing, nailing, and ensuring everything was measured perfectly. Then came the walls, insulation, and windows, the latter of which Mark spent an inordinate amount of time selecting. Every day, he witnessed his tiny house taking shape. Every step, every hammer stroke, every nail driven brought him closer to his goal. After the shell was completed, Mark moved to the interior. He installed a small but efficient kitchen, a compact bathroom with a composting toilet, a fold-down bed that doubled as a workspace, and built-in storage that utilized every nook and cranny. He spent countless hours studying, ensuring that he got it right the first time. Days turned into weeks, then months. Finally, after countless hours of meticulous labor, the tiny house was complete. It was more than just a house. It was a manifestation of his beliefs, his love for the environment, and his desire for a simpler, more meaningful life. The tiny house was everything he had imagined, compact yet comfortable, minimal yet filled with character. The day was slowly surrendering to the night, and the first stars began to punctuate the sky. So it was time for a final glance from the outside and then to go to bed for the first time in his finished home. Mark's first night in his tiny home was a testament to his thoughtful design and diligent work. It was comfortable, snug, and had everything he needed within arm's reach. The dawn light creeping in through his triple-glazed windows gently nudged him awake. He arose from his bed that seamlessly transitioned back into a workspace. Despite the early hour, he felt rejuvenated. Just as Mark was finishing up, there was a knock on the door. It was the reporter from the local newspaper, punctual to the minute. She had a contagious enthusiasm about her, her eyes wide and curious as she stepped into Mark's tiny home. She documented every detail and asked pointed questions about Mark's design choices and motivations. Despite the home's size, the interviewer took her time, immersing herself in every nook and cranny. She admired the tiny kitchen, the folding bed/workspace, and the compact bathroom. He spoke with passion and conviction, his words painting a vivid picture of a man who found purpose and satisfaction in a life less cluttered. Just as the interview was coming to an end, something strange happened. Mark couldn't quite put his finger on it, but the atmosphere shifted. There was a subtle tension in the air, a slight change in the way the wind caressed the trees. Something was different. Something was off. Still, the strange feeling kept lingering. During the interview, the woman from the newspaper kept watching out his window, and at one time, she even said she saw something move, but that must have been a mirage because Mark was the only one occupying the house. He watched as she left, her excitement palpable as she carried a potentially rivaling story back with her. But as Mark turned back to his tiny house, he couldn't shake off the odd feeling that had settled around him. The day had started perfectly, but now it was filled with confusion. The strange happening during the interview had left him with an uneasy feeling. He sighed, shaking off the feeling and walking back into his home. He knew it was ridiculous. He was the sole inhabitant of this home. Yet, the reporter's words echoed in his mind. He meticulously went through the entire house. He checked every corner, every cupboard, every drawer. He sighed again, berating himself for his irrational fear. But as he stood in the silence of his home, he felt it again, that strange feeling of not being alone. He spent a restless night, his dreams filled with strange noises and lurking shadows. Morning found him bleary-eyed and tense. He got up from his bed, his sleep-deprived mind still on high alert. He prepared his breakfast mechanically, his mind running a million miles a minute. His peace of mind seemed to have evaporated overnight, replaced with doubt and uncertainty. Deciding that he needed to put an end to his paranoia, he began searching his tiny home once again. Every corner, every nook, every hidden space. Nothing. He sighed, berating himself for his fear. He reminded himself of the countless. The hours seemed to stretch and seemed to last forever as the fear became a constant companion. His tiny home now seemed almost eerie in its silence. He considered calling a friend, inviting them over to dispel this fear, but he quickly dismissed the idea, knowing how ridiculous he would sound. He thought about leaving for a few days, staying in a hotel or a friend's house, but he quickly dismissed that idea too, not wanting to give in to his irrational fear. Mark tried to determine where the sound had come from. He listened closely and realized it was from the tiny space under his tiny house, the only place he hadn't meticulously cleaned. The tiny house was on a mobile trailer, and there was a small gap between the house and the bottom of the trailer. But what could be down there? Slowly, Mark slipped out of bed, trying not to make a sound. He moved like a shadow, barefoot and apprehensive. His heart pounded in his chest as he crept towards the floorboards, his senses heightened. He had his trusty baseball bat at the ready, both a comfort and a stark reminder of the situation's reality. With every step, the sense of dread in his guts seemed to deepen. He opened the hatch slowly, the creaking sound echoing in the silence. He was about to swing his bat when he saw a figure huddled in the crawlspace. He was taken aback, but when his eyes adjusted, he realized it was a teenager. The boy looked up, his eyes wide with terror as they met Mark's. It was the neighbor's boy. Mark had seen him kicking a football around in the field next to the grounds where he had built his home. The boy was petrified, but he crawled out from under the house. With a shaky voice, the boy said he'd explained what was going on. He admitted that he had left home after a big fight with his parents. He told them he wouldn't come back to teach them a lesson. One night, he saw that the space under Mark's trailer was open and thought it could be a good place to stay. So he crawled in with his sleeping bag. He made sure not to disturb anything and would sneak out through the window during the day to use Mark's sink for brushing his teeth. Suddenly, Mark realized what the interviewer had seen, and he felt sorry for the boy. Mark knew he couldn't let this continue, but he also made a promise. He said, "You can always come here if you need a place to stay or just want to hang out, but we're going to figure out how to solve the situation with your parents." They all went to the boy's parents' house together. It felt weird and uncomfortable at first, but Mark's presence and calming words made things better. The boy said sorry and fixed things, and his parents thanked Mark for his help. When Mark went back to his small house, he couldn't stop laughing about the whole situation. The strange, quiet feeling was gone, and it felt calm and peaceful. He realized that his small house had made a positive impact on someone else's life, which he hadn't expected. That night, Mark slept really well. He didn't feel lonely anymore because his home was filled with new memories, even if they were a bit unusual. The boy's story gave his home a deeper meaning and a greater purpose. When morning came, Mark woke up to a peaceful day, knowing that he had not just built a small house, but also a place of comfort for himself and others.